Just looking again at John 18, and we did a little video about John 18 before, but I wanted just to add something to it as well. And I'm going to read from verse 25. It says, "Meanwhile, Simon Peter was still standing there, warming himself. So they asked him, 'You aren't one of his disciples too, are you?' He denied it, saying, 'I am not.' One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. 'Didn't I see you with him in the garden?' Again, Peter denied it, and at that moment a cock began to crow." Jesus had said that Peter would deny him 3 times before the cock crowed, and this was the second and third time. And it made me think really how did Peter get into that situation of failure, and how do we end up in a situation of failure? I was watching some of those compilation videos yesterday on YouTube, sometimes a little bit banal, sometimes probably a bit of a distraction, but they're all about the, those fail moments. And of course they have lots of hits on YouTube because lots of people fail. Lots of people can see the funny side of failure, can't they? And we can easily laugh at somebody else's failure. That's quite straightforward. I think at the time, for the person, it's probably not always that funny. Some of them will see the funny side of it straight away, others won't. But you look back and think, that was hilarious. Of course, some of those, perhaps they're full of shame. Someone said something, and of course they realise what they've said sounds awful, it sounds really embarrassing, and people laugh at them because of the words they've just used. Or the thought that it's provoked, not always clean, of course. Sometimes people have just the mistakes happen. They've fallen over, they've dropped something in the river. They've, for some bizarre reason, the zookeeper has decided, with the permission of the news channel, to bring a python or a chimpanzee into the studio. And you think, well, what were they thinking? That was bound to go wrong. Something was going to happen. The classic moment of, I think Blue Peter, wasn't it? The elephant comes into the studio, and of course they can't control him, and he makes a mess and everything. So we will laugh at these things. I was watching a wedding one and thinking, like, why would you have a toddler, throwing the rose petals? That's bound to go wrong. So sometimes we can see failure coming. We can see perhaps how easy it is for that to happen, and other times we can't. Things just happen. We want to do the very best we can. I was watching some friends who were doing some worship online, some Christian worship, and they'd had the auto captions in place, but of course some of the different people were from other countries, sometimes suddenly singing in another language, or their accent was quite strong, and auto caption was trying to do its best, like we all do. Like I try and do my best, and I'm trying to listen to what God's saying, and auto captions is trying to listen to the words, of course, but it's picking up the wrong word, and then of course saying quite hilarious things which they're not obviously saying at all. So we sometimes have that challenge, don't we? We recognise that we easily fail. Sometimes by our own stupidity, sometimes we end up feeling shamed by it, sometimes we haven't thought something through. And I think one of my prayers today is that we would have that wisdom. I think Peter, strangely set himself up to fail, not because God was trying to shame him, but because I think Jesus knew the reality of humanity. And I don't know, I'm somebody, I like to joke around, sometimes maybe a bit too flippant, maybe just a little bit too, make a laugh of life and not take it too seriously. And others perhaps are more intentional, more serious, more focused. But we can, we all have those moments when we take ourselves way too seriously. And I think in some ways Peter took his own humanity way too seriously. I'm going to die for you. Well, of course he was able to, but only with the power of the Holy Spirit later on, not in human strength. And so I want to pray, Lord, those moments when we feel like in our own strength, we feel we're going to do some great thing for God, we're going to be super spiritual, we're going to make it. And it's not that you don't see the desire of our heart, but you also know the reality, the fickleness and the weakness of our own humanity. You know our ability to #fail. You know what it's like. You know our ability to be quite deceived. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. There's a nature in our heart that is not inclined towards doing the right thing, and it's only the power of the Holy Spirit redeeming us that gets us to the right thing. So I pray, Lord, help us. We need that heart change. We need that heart surgery. We are really deceived if we think that in human strength we're going to be some amazing, victorious Christian, and we're just going to jump through all the right hoops and we're always going to get it right, because we can't do it without the power of the Holy Spirit. We can't do it in human strength. It's just not going to work. Peter's example is a great one. Fail 3 times, and then this awful remorse and weeping, thinking, what have I done? How did I manage to mess that up? When the pressure came on, why did I just say I don't know him? And Lord, I want to pray that for those times when the pressure's on, or when the challenge is there, when the rubber hits the road, when the reality is in the situation, when we thought we'd probably be really highly spiritual, and when we actually suddenly discover we're quite prone to getting it wrong. Help us, Lord. Help us to be able to stand at those times. Help us to not depend on our human strength, our human wisdom, our human resolve, our human ability. Those things are just not going to be good enough. We can't do it in our human strength. We need your Holy Spirit. We need your wisdom. We need your guidance. We haven't reinvented the wheel. We haven't suddenly become spiritual Superman, spiritual Superwoman. We can get it wrong, Lord, but we want to learn from mistakes too, and we don't want to walk in shame. And show us, Lord, if there are areas that we need to change too, if there are areas where perhaps we thought we were great success in, and we suddenly realise, maybe we're not. Maybe actually we need to find you in this. Maybe we need to learn how to trust you in this. And we're not someone on a great pedestal, but we're someone who depends and needs the Lord. We're someone who's dependent entirely on the grace of God, not on our own strength, not on human wisdom, but we're someone who depends on Jesus.